Orchard Human Services, uplifting lives by counseling, educating, and caring.
Mama Mystique, of children with attachment disorder, including RAD and DSED.
Hello, this is Dr.Darleen Wodzenski, and I'm with Orchard Human Services, uplifting lives by counseling, caring, and educating. One of the special things we do at Orchard is work with children and families of children with disordered attachment. It could be a child who was adopted or in foster care, or a child who had some sort of disruption in high quality care. Maybe a child who suffered from neglect or abuse. And then in some cases, children are traumatized because of serious life circumstances like a storm or a house invasion or some sort of violence or a serious accident. Then there are a whole list of contributing factors to interference in healthy attachment development. Things like death, divorce, a family member being deployed, a family member having a serious mental health or medical condition, or perhaps a child has the medical condition. Some babies are born and placed in NICUs or neonatal intensive care units for many weeks or months at a time, and that can seriously interfere with the process of the child bonding and attaching with the mother and primary caregivers. So today I wanted to talk about the Mama Mystique. There is a really incredibly challenging, painful, and heart-wrenching phenomenon that happens with many children who suffer from disordered attachment. And as I'm sure you all know, attachment development is the capacity of the child to be human. It's the thing that allows humans to love and be loved, trust and be trustworthy, care and be cared for by others, and to have compassion and to receive compassion and caring for others. So these are the things that are the foundations of relationships, of love, of caring, of citizenship, of being part of a family, and just being a human being. So when children suffer some sort of interference or disruption in healthy attachment, it interferes with their ability to be happy. They lack a sense of safety and a foundation of knowing who they are and who cares for them because something went wrong in the process. And often children will try to bond and love whoever is in their environment and caring for them. So a child may develop a real passionate sense of caring and attachment for a primary caregiver, whether it's a mother or a father or a surrogate. Even if a child is placed in foster care, they'll try to bond and love their caregivers. But if something happens and that caregiver-child relationship is not a healthy one or doesn't really get off to a good start, the child can wind up associating those feelings of incredible love and tenderness and caring for their caregiver with the pain that went with it. So an example would be a child born to a mother who had a drug use problem, substance use disorder. So the child is loving the mother, gazing lovingly into the mother's face, and the mother doesn't want to hold the child, lays the child down, lets the child lay there, and maybe if the child cries and asks for attention, the mother goes into another room. This is an example of neglect, which can have a dramatic impact on the child's brain. We know the parts of the brain that are in charge of inhibition. In other words, stopping ourselves from doing things that we shouldn't do because they're either not safe or appropriate or logical or they're not socially acceptable. So when a child lacks the ability to practice inhibition, you may notice them doing lots of strange and bizarre things. So imagine that a baby who's loving a caregiver is suddenly neglected or worse, even harmed by the caregiver or allowed to be harmed by someone else in the caregiver's presence. The child suddenly is going to associate the feelings of love and caring for that primary caregiver with something really horrific. Now, when that child moves forward in life and attempts to make another serious attachment with another caregiver, that child is very likely to go back to those same brain cells that stored the original memories of love for that original caregiver and the same feelings of upset and pain and terror and heartache that were associated with the neglect, the trauma, or the abuse. And so what we see is that as children move on to new relationships, perhaps are placed in another family, or maybe are adopted or taken care of by another family member, like a sister or an aunt or a brother or a grandfather, as the child tries to bond with another caregiver, and it's usually a female caregiver where the problems arise, the child at the same time remembers the pain and the suffering associated with that primary loving parent-child or caregiver-child relationship. And the child goes berserk. And so we call this the Mama Mystique of attachment disorder. And so how it looks in families is that a really wonderful family might adopt a child, and that mother is a great mother. Many of the families that we work with were already successful parents who had children that they'd raised successfully, either into their tween or teen years, and some even into early adulthood. And then the parent said, gosh, we're in a place in life where we can take on another child, bring in a child who doesn't have a home, and give them a chance. So these mothers who are very loving and compassionate people, who have awesome mothering skills, will take on this child. And then something goes wrong. The child will reject that mother. Well, why? Because when the child feels the nurture and the compassion and hears that tender, loving voice of the new mother going, oh, it's okay, sweetie, I'm here, I love you, and the comfort and the holding and the tenderness, the baby remembers the first time that he or she loved, and then remembers being separated from that person, and then remembers the other circumstances, again, whether it be trauma, abuse, neglect, or some other traumatizing situation. And so the baby just freaks out and starts pushing away. And the thing is, they tend to do this to the mother, but not so much the father, the siblings, the grandparents, the other people in the child's world. And so you'll have these incredible mothers who know that they're putting their all into it. And no matter what they do, this baby is rejecting them. Perfectly good mothers who are loving and nurturing and cooing and coddling and caring just like they're supposed to. But what they get out of their new baby, whom they've adopted or taken on through foster care or have taken over the care of from a friend or a family member in distress or who was unable to care, what they get from that baby is rejection. These babies will bite, kick, scream, or just stiffen up and push away. They never actually settle down, put their head on the mama's shoulder, and calm down and allow themselves to be held. They tend to fight any type of cuddle or nurturance. But curiously, that same child may do okay with the dad. That is the really confusing and confounding part. Sometimes the dads are able to pick up these children and cuddle them, maybe not for a long time, but for a few seconds at a time, maybe even a minute or two. So the dads and the other family members in the satellite around that child have a more normalized relationship with the child. Mind you, the child is not overly warm and friendly with any of those key family members, but the child acts okay enough that all those family members look at that mom and say, hey, what's the matter with you, mom? If you're just a little bit more patient, this is just a little baby or just a little child. But what they don't understand is that based on this Mama Mystique of attachment disorder, the child already had a huge catastrophic failure in attaching to someone in their life already. And so the idea of attaching to someone new and feeling that love and the intense want and desire for that primary caregiver reminds the child, first, that they lost that person, and second, that the circumstances leading up to the loss involve some sort of neglect, trauma, abuse, or really difficult circumstance. And so what I want to share tonight is that if you know a family that has taken on a child who came to them through alternate means, adoption, foster care, perhaps they are therapeutic parents helping out other people in the community who are in some sort of medical or mental health crisis, or maybe they're grandparents or sisters or aunts who've taken on a child whose birth parents were not able to care for the child, or maybe whose birth parents died or were incarcerated or deployed, whatever the circumstances, please remember there is something that we call the Mama Mystique that causes children of disordered attachment to dramatically reject, push away, and violently resist the love, care, and nurturance of really qualified, loving, and caring mothers. And those mothers need our support. They need us all to reassure them that, yes, there is a phenomenon called the Mama Mystique, and you're not crazy, Mom. You are noticing that this baby or this child is rejecting you, pushing you away, and is absolutely terrified to bond with you. The good news is we have ways to work around it. We won't get into that at this moment, but we will have future videos, and we have extensive trainings at Orchard Human Services to help the families and the children overcome the challenges inherent in bringing a child from another family into your home. Thanks for spending these few minutes with me. I'm Dr. Darleen Wodzenski with Orchard Human Services. You can find us online at orchardhumanservices.org. Happy parenting!